your attention, please? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm sorry you're able. Yisrayl now. I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. It's now time to start finding your seats for services.
May I have your attention, please? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is son Yisrayl, Yahweh Hawkins, and I'd like to serve you forever as a priest starting very soon. I have a privilege and honor to present to you when the sons and daughters of Yisrayl now entering the sanctuary. Now I have the privilege and honor to present to you one of the sons of Yisrayl, Buffalo Bill Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone! You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. My title today is Don't Fight Back. Now, Yeshua, when he was getting killed, he could have fought back. He could have told those Roman soldiers, "You stop it. Leave me alone. I'm the Messiah. You don't treat me like that." But what did he do? Turn to Isaiah 53. Let's look at verse 7. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before his shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. If you'll turn to Matthew 26. Page 756. Matthew 26, and let's look at verse 60. But found none. Yes, though many false witnesses came forward, they found none. At last 2 false witnesses came forward and said, "This man said, I am able to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days." And the high priest rose up and said, "Do you answer nothing to what these men testify against you?" But Yeshua remained silent. He didn't say, "Oh, they're lying." Then the high priest responded and shouted at him, "I call upon you to utter an oath by the living mighty one, and tell us whether you are the Messiah, the Son of the Mighty One." He was spat on. Yeshua was spat on. He was mocked. But he opened not his mouth. So, what did Pastor do? Did he say, "Y'all guys are a bunch of liars"? No, he didn't.
If you all please stand, I have the privilege and honor to present to you the great son of Yisrayl, Deacon Yisrayl Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. Shalom. Please be seated. Is everybody enjoying the feast? Praise Yahweh. It's been an awesome feast so far. I hope everybody of you have been keeping up with the goal of this feast and keeping your mind on this goal, which is unity, coming together in unity. And I hope everyone remembers exactly what unity is. You know, it's everybody keeping the laws of Yahweh together. You know, remember unity, you and I in unity with Yahweh. So, now it's really easy to say, we got to keep the laws of Yahweh, we got to get along, you can't fight, and things like that. Those are things we hear all the time. But yet, we still fall short, and we still, get in these bickerings and arguments with one another. And then you go back afterwards like, man, I can't believe I did that. And then, the next day you get in these bickerings and arguments with one another, and then at the end of the day, man, I can't believe I just did that. So, why is this cycle taking place? What's the key to getting rid of this thing, that which I didn't want to do is what I still did, just like Shaul said. So, that which you don't want to do, we end up still falling short in doing. What's the key? Let's go all the way back to the beginning. All the way back to the beginning, before mankind was created, you had Yahweh, and he was just sitting all by himself, and he created all this stuff, and he was just like, yeah, look at myself. I created all this stuff. I'm just awesome, ain't I? Right? That's what he did? No. He created, the universe, and then he said, it wouldn't be fair for me to just sit here and soak this all up all by myself. So what did he do? He created mankind. He created creation so he could share it with. So everybody could be joyful. Now, he didn't have to do that, right? He could have just sat there and took it all for himself. But no, he wanted a family to share that with. So that should tell you something. Remember, we're all trying to be like Yahweh. But notice how generous Yahweh is. How he's not selfish. Okay, he's selfless. So if you look at every one of Yahweh's laws, remember the 10 Commandments, you have love for Yahweh, which you have to love Yahweh, learn his laws, understand his laws, so that you can love your brothers, which is the rest of the 10 Commandments. Love for your brothers. Now that's not just, love for myself, I only love myself, I'm going to get all these things just for me. No, it's love for your brothers. You're focused on your brothers. Remember what Yahshua told the man who asked him about Yahweh's laws. Love Yahweh and love your neighbor as yourself. So notice we're taking the focus off of ourselves here and putting it on everybody else. Okay, now with this world's way, if you look at it, it's the exact opposite. Okay, it's the exact opposite. Immediate gratification. You can go and do this instant thing right here and now and get gratification, get satisfied right then and there. Okay, do whatever feels good for yourself, of course, right? And this brings, it's joy. It's fake joy that the world teaches. And we've been raised up in this world where things like this are joyful. But it's a fake joy. It's a carnal joy. You feel good. You feel awesome about yourself. Okay? And do anything you can to get over on the next person. It doesn't matter if he's homeless, living on the side of the road, and doesn't have any money. And, it doesn't matter if we're bombing children in Syria or bombing children here and there in Yemen. Okay? It doesn't matter if some people are suffering as long as I'm on top. As long as I'm doing all right. That's all that matters. But, so that's the world's joy. Fake joy. You might be, fake joyful while a whole bunch of other people suffer. That, of course, is not Yahweh's way. In an argument, okay, you want that other person to know that you're on top. You're a lot better than he is, and it don't matter what he's talking about. That's nothing. I'm on top right now. But really, you've been on that other person's side. Are you thinking he's on top? You're thinking of how much of a stupid jerk he is for trying to think he's on top. No, I'm on top. And it just, you have an argument, you have a fight. That doesn't generate someone being on top and someone being on the bottom. That generates hatred. Okay, that's not how we come to peace. That's not how we come to unity. Remember what Bill just talked about earlier. Don't fight back. Take the lower man's seat. Let the other person be right. Feel joyful. Okay? Go ahead and don't be selfish. Be selfless. Let the other person feel joyful. Okay? So that's the way of the world. They want to be on top. You want to be on top. But what's Yahweh's way? Notice, look at what we've been taught in the House of Yahweh. Service to others. Go to praise Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. Service to others. Okay? Go help out at the cafeteria. Go help out on the job sites. That way, other people are served. Other people are joyful. And you'll realize through practice on this thing, service to others, that it actually brings joy. You get joy out of seeing other people joyful. Okay, isn't it great when everybody around you is joyful? There's that joyful unity. Praise Yahweh. That's there. You know, another thing that we've learned. Learn what to teach so you can teach what you've learned. Don't learn what to teach so you're so smart now. And you can just, I'm so smart and go around telling everybody I'm so smart. Well, what are you so smart about? Oh, no, I'm not going to tell you. I don't want you to be smart. I'm so smart. Well, if you can't teach anybody, is that really being smart? That's really, really selfish. So learn what to teach so you can share it with others. So everybody else can become smart. Or probably a better way to put it, so they can become wise. So they can learn. And then, do they hold it for themselves too? No, they teach it to their children. And we're going to teach it to the rest of the universe. So everybody can learn Yahweh's laws and become joyful. Praise Yahweh. So it's not for yourself. It's for everybody else. It's for others. I remember at work, I was helping out. And I was with some of the brothers, awesome brothers, and we were talking about this very thing. What's the key to righteousness? And we were listening to some of the sermons, and it was like, it's selflessness. You got to be selfless. That's the whole key. A lot of times we do these things that we don't want to do. And if you're selfless, if you take your mind off of yourself and onto others, that's how you can become, in the pattern of Yahweh. Because that's what Yahweh wanted to do. He wanted to share it with others. But look at it this way too. If all of us, everybody in the house of Yahweh, is working to make the other person joyful, if I'm working to make my brother joyful, I'm not worried about myself. I'm working to make my brother joyful, and he's working to make the next person joyful. But wait, this brother over here, what's he doing? He's taking care of me. He's working to make me joyful, right? So you're joyful anyway. Why do you got to worry about making yourself joyful? Praise Yahweh. Okay, so everybody's working together for the common interest, the benefit of everybody else. So by putting yourself aside, if everybody's doing the same thing, you don't have to worry about yourself. Worry about the next person. Worry about serving Yahweh, because that is service to Yahweh. Service to your brother is service to Yahweh. And you serve your brother by keeping Yahweh's laws. That's love. Remember what love is, true love? Keeping Yahweh's laws towards your brother. It all ties together in this huge circle, and there's no link left out. It's a circle. Remember, it's circumspect. So that's really, really beautiful, the way Yahweh has that set up. But by putting yourself aside, by serving others, being selfless, not selfish, being selfless, you get taken care of. Okay? And if you're still stuck in that selfish way, you just can't know, I gotta be joyful myself. I gotta be selfish. Well, guess what? Okay? You're serving others, and somewhere down the line, you end up getting served too. So you're taking care of yourself indirectly anyway. If you just stuck in that groove of being prideful, you're still taking care of yourself by taking care of everybody else. So the whole body is working to take care of you. Look how important you are. Okay? You're the lowest slave, and everybody's working for you. All right? But, you're working for everybody too. Everybody's working together for everybody. So everybody feels that way. All right, so it's not being selfish at all. It's being selfless. It's putting yourself aside. If you turn over to 1 Corinthians chapter 9, it's on page 893. 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 27, or 26 and 27 rather. It says, "Therefore I do not run like a man running aimlessly. I do not fight." Okay, I do not fight. I don't strive with my brothers, in a strifeful manner. I don't fight. Remember what Bill talked about, Yahshua? He didn't fight back. That's another example of selflessness, right? Yahshua could have said, no, I'm not going to go die. Die? For everybody? That's my life. You got to be crazy. But look what he's done for all of us. Okay? He died for us and was resurrected, so he got served too, right? Yahweh didn't abandon him just because he died. No, he got resurrected and got his position. Just like we're all promised, because remember, we're all brothers in that promise. So he served everybody so that we can have this opportunity, so that we can have life. He was being selfless. Okay? So 1 Corinthians 26 and 9, verse 26 and 27. "I do not fight like a man who beats the air. No, I discipline my body." Okay? The carnal nature really wants you to just serve yourself. But I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, so that after I have preached to others, What does that remind you of? Learn what to teach so you can teach what you've learned. Okay, after I've preached to others, remember what King Solomon said in Ecclesiastes? What benefit is it, if somebody learns all these things, gets all this great knowledge and wisdom, all these great possessions, and then he dies? Okay? So, all that was for nothing. But no, if you preach it to others, that way they can enjoy that same thing, you yourself will not be disqualified. Praise Yahweh. It just falls right back into that job that we have here in these last days. Learning to teach others. That's what we're here for. We're here to be a kingdom of priests. So if you don't strive to become a teacher, which is a priest is a teacher. If you don't strive to become a teacher or a priest, what are you here for? That's what that's our goal. That's the whole reason we're here, is to become teachers, to become priests. So strive to become teachers. Praise Yahweh. So that after I've preached it to others, I myself will not be disqualified. I'll receive that position, that goal that we're all reaching for, of complete unity. So, it's no benefit for you to try to serve yourself. Work on serving others. And by serving others, you're serving Yahweh. Okay, that's the great goal. Get your joy out of serving others. Okay, now if you'd all please stand. It was an honor to speak before everyone. And I'd like to turn it over to the great Kahan, Alyanai Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. You may all be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. My topic today is it's going to be along the same lines, the lines of unity. Working in unity, a lesson from microorganisms. So we're going to be looking at how microorganisms work together in unity to help us enjoy life, and of course to ensure their own survival and their well-being as well. And but first, I would like us to turn to Proverbs 6, verse 6. Proverbs 6:6, and that's on page 499, and says here, "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise." Of course, today we're going to be learning from things a little smaller than ants. As Yahweh made all things, as Yahweh made microorganisms, there are usually two types of microorganisms. You have the planktonic microorganism, planktonic. You can all see that. Planktonic microorganisms. And then, of course, you have the planktonic means free-floating microorganisms. They just go off on their own. And then we have the sessile or attached microorganisms. These are attached to surfaces. You don't find them as individuals. You find them as part of communities. And these microorganisms, for a long time, for generations, microbiologists have studied microorganisms as single entities, as individuals, planktonic microorganisms. But recently, they found out the microorganisms don't normally exist as single individuals, because they don't survive as single individuals very well. They prefer to be a part of communities, community of microorganisms, living together in structures that look like cities, as we'll find out very shortly. So that is why over the years, even antibiotics that are targeted at microorganisms, they're designed to target those individual microorganisms. And we said 99.9% of them live in communities. So if you're getting antibiotics ready to attack individual microorganisms, small wonder they're only able to mask the symptoms and not able to deal with the disease. Okay, because microorganisms in communities behave differently from microorganisms that are, individual, free-floating. You find very few of them in that situation, in fact. Most of them are in communities. So, majority of them, like I pointed out, have never been isolated. Majority of the microorganisms that exist have never been isolated by microbiologists, for the simple fact that sometimes they require some specific factors for their survival that you just cannot reproduce in a lab. So many of them will only do well in those communities, as I've pointed out. And we're going to see what benefit that is very shortly, and how that applies to us as people. So let me give an example here. If a microorganism was living, was free living, was just existing on its own, just wandering about, it's easily killed with disinfectants and antibiotics and so on. But when it's part of a community, you're going to need, in fact, if you have 1,000 times the normal dosage of antibiotics, you still can't knock it out if it's part of a community, because there is a shield of protection in being part of that community than being on your own. Just, it's like a twig or a stick. You can break it if it's a single one, and when there's a bunch of them, it becomes almost impossible to break. That's the strength of a community, of living together in a community. And working together in unity too, as we'll see shortly. So if we'll turn quickly to 1 Corinthians chapter 1, and that'll be on page 887, and I'll be reading verse 10 here. It says, "Now I appeal to you, brothers, by the authority of our King, Yeshua Messiah, that you all speak the same thing, and that there be no divisions amongst you, but that you may be perfectly united in mind and thought," because that makes us stronger, that makes us to survive better, that ensures that we're able to achieve the goals set before us, the ultimate human potential that Father Yahweh has set for us. Now, the word biofilm itself, biofilm, it's actually two parts, bio and film. Bio means life, and film, of course, means a thin layer of something. A thin layer could be plastic, could be rubber, could be smear or something, but biofilm then means a thin layer of life, basically. But according to the Indian Journal of Periodontology, just tell you what, it's right there. Indian Journal of Periodontology. And of course, I'm paraphrasing and combining these two here. This here is Systems Biology, a Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. That's these two here. They say, putting it simply now, it says a biofilm consists of microorganisms and their products embedded in a highly organized intercellular matrix of a substance called EPS. In other words, you have the microorganisms, you have, of course, the products they produce, and then you have them enclosed in the EPS, or extracellular polymeric substances, and this is how EPS is spelled. All right, that's right there. It's EPS, extracellular polymeric substances. EPS, that's a substance. So you can think of it like a walled city. And you can think of the EPS like the wall protecting that community within that city. So you can think of the EPS like a shield of protection of salt. And we're going to look a little bit more at that very, very, very quickly. So now, can I have video one? I think it's, I can't use video one right now. If I have video one. So generally, biofilms consist of a variety of microorganisms, different types of microbes living together in a community. And so that's what it looks like if you were to be looking at it under the microscope. That's like a 3D rendition of what a biofilm looks like. So we can put that in our mind. And of course, you see it's growing and growing over the time period. And it keeps on expanding as more microbes come and join in. We'll explain the process of how that occurs. And if you look at it, it looks something like a human city too, with skyscrapers and all. So they're able to do this. This is like a city, in fact. They're able to do this just because they all work together. Each person or each individual doing its own part. And all of those structures you're seeing, the cementing that holds them together, you could call that the bond of peace, holding them together. Then you have those things like the net that symbolizes the protective covering that they have. And you have so many different colors there. They're all from all different micro-kingdoms, all from all kinds of backgrounds, but they're all together there, and they have to work in unity if the biofilm is going to survive. And of course, if the biofilm is not able to survive, then their own survivability also is affected. So that's what a biofilm looks like. Now, so different microorganisms working together in unity. So think of it like a city of microbes, complex, just like a human city, multicultural community, like a human city, different types of microbes, eukaryotes, prokaryotes. Even in some cases, there are larger organisms that even join in that community just to make everything work okay. So biofilms cannot form without quorum sensing. Quorum sensing. Biofilms will not form without quorum sensing. And quorum sensing, think of it like how microbes talk, how they communicate with one another. And we've seen a video here some time ago about how microbes talk. And of course, this quorum sensing is a system of molecular or chemical signaling. We communicate using emails, internet, and talking to one another and so on, using our vocal cords and of course, sign language and so on. And of course, we use smoke signals and signs in the clouds too. Yes, but microbes use chemical signaling in communicating with one another. And they have to be able to communicate to be able to form that city. They have to be able to, for example, there will be division of labor. That will be every part of that community working together. They have to be able to communicate to be able to do that. So they use quorum sensing to estimate how many microbes there are in a particular environment. For example, they need the numbers to build a community. They're going to need to know when there's enough of them to be able to do that. And of course, quorum sensing helps them to be able to do that because they keep calling out all the time. And then when they get, okay, there's enough of us, now we can start building. And each one starts to produce what it's supposed to produce, and then it goes on, and then the community is built up together in unity. They also need quorum sensing to be able to send messages, apart from messages to one another, messages inviting other microbes to come join the community. They have to be able to do that, to send word out so other microbes can join that community, so new residents to join the community. So the bottom line is communication, agreement, unity is a key factor in forming biofilms. So without biofilms, members of the biofilm being in unity, it would be impossible to have a biofilm. And when you don't have a biofilm, it would be impossible to have the protection that biofilms offer microorganisms. Okay? And it's going to become more important as we go along. If we open quickly to Romans 14, and I'm going to be reading verse 19 here. It says here, that's on page 884 in your book of Yahweh. It said, therefore, let us pursue the things of peace and things which build up the house of Yahweh for one another. Because when we build up the house of Yahweh, in the end, we're building it up for one another. All right? So that's exactly what microbes do. And that's one more lesson we can learn from these microbes. Now, if a person was moving into a new city, for example, like there are a number of things that you would normally do. First, you want to choose the city that you're going to live in. And of course, I remember when Pastor mentioned that when he was called by the owner of this 44 acres, to ask him if he wanted it. And then he came out here to meet him. And of course, the engineers checked it out and found this was the highest place or the tallest place or tallest point in Callahan County. Of course, at that point, you're selecting where you want to situate your community. All right? So think of it like that. So first, you want to decide where I'm going to have to live. You choose the city where you want to live. You choose your neighborhood where you want to live that best suits you. And then you go about setting up your buildings. And of course, you're going to be living among many other people. And of course, there are rules and regulations governing the coexistence of the people in communities. The same thing with how microbes are formed, how biofilms are formed, how microbes form biofilms. It's the same, exactly same thing. So can we see video 2, please? So of course, As you see there, you find maybe one or two free floating microorganisms realizing that they need to be in a community or to live in unity. You find them locating the surface, and then they decide what part of that surface they're going to want to live in, and then they start to multiply. And before you know it, they start to attract other people. You can see different colors coming in there, and then the biofilm starts to form gradually. And that's how quickly it looks like the multiplication, and of course new people joining in and multiplying, and you're going to see that the thing keeps on expanding and expanding. And of course they're going to start to, when they get to a certain number, they're going to need quorum sensing, like I pointed out. The quorum sensing is going to tell them if the number is large enough for the structures of the city to start to be built. And of course that's what's represented by those green balls you see going out of that bacteria there. And of course, once the number has been established, they know because the concentration of those molecules in the community where they are, the concentration increases. So by the intensity of the signal, they're able to tell, okay, there's enough of us here. And of course, they start to grow structures like pili and fimbriae to help hold them together as part of the community. And then you're going to see them building the EPS next, which is the extracellular polymeric substance that holds them together, forms a protective covering for the community. And that's the green goo that you see being produced there. And before you know it, they have a 3D structure that is the biofilm. So generally, first the microbe gets close to the surface where the biofilm community is going to start, inspects it. Its movement actually slows down a little bit to allow it to survey the area and determine where the biofilm is going to be set up. And next, they start to multiply like you see there, and then they start to invite other people to be part of the community. And the rest of it is what we've seen. It's going to look like a 3D structure, 3D architecture, which is made possible by the EPS, the extracellular polymeric substance that helps them. And of course, like in every community, they're going to need to have a system of getting rid of waste generated by, of course, living together, and they're going to have a means of resupplying themselves with food and materials that they need. So a biofilm, like any human city, has a network of water channels that collects waste. So you could think about like a waste collection or waste disposal system that gets rid of all the waste. And of course, they have a system to harvest food from around. Well, food is stored by the biofilm community so that in times of adversity, members of the community can have food. All right, so they store away food. And they're able to survive, biofilms are able to survive even in environments where there is little or no food. Because the EPS covering it is negatively charged, and it's able to actually harvest food material from the surrounding environment. It's able to harvest and concentrate the food material for use of the microbes that are part of the community. So while other individual microbes that may be outside of the community may be starving to death, inside the community there is surplus of food for them to enjoy life. So there is a lot of advantages in being a part of the biofilm community. One of them is the food that I've spoken about. And there's another thing. Different parts of the community have different conditions existing. Let's think about the ocean for a moment. If you look at the ocean, the amount of light you get if you're close to the surface, it's a little bit, it's much more than the amount of light you're going to get if you're further down, further deep into the ocean. It gets darker as you go deeper into the ocean. So what that means is organisms that have green chlorophyll and need the light to make food, they're going to have to find themselves close to the surface where they can be able to receive sunlight. And those that don't need the light can go further down. Then there is some organization there. Same in the biofilm. They have to be able to agree. They have to be able to take care of the needs of everyone. You find that in certain parts of that biofilm, as small as it may appear to us, it's a giant city to them because they're very tiny. Parts of the biofilm may have lower oxygen tension, for example. And other parts that may be cell products or that may be high acidity and so on. So conditions actually vary as you move from one part of the biofilm to another. The same way a nation is divided into states. and the states are divided into counties. In the same way, biofilms are also divided into micro colonies or micro environments within the biofilm. So you have conditions changing. So they have to agree, okay, who goes where? Microbes that don't like the oxygen, they go to where there's lower oxygen tension. Microbes that love a lot of oxygen, they're distributed in areas where there's a lot of oxygen. Basically, there is a distribution to take care of the needs of everyone in the community. And that takes working together in unity to achieve that. Also, if we, just like in a human community where we all have different functions and different roles, and we'll find ourselves in different parts of whatever the community we belong to, and of course we function at those levels, each part of the community has to do its own part for the entire community to be successful. If we go back to chapter 12 of Romans, 12 and verse 4 and 5, I'll read very quickly. And says here for us, that's on page 883, says, for us we have many members in one body, and all members do not have the same function. So we, being many, are one body in Messiah, and each one members, one belonging to another. Each one members, one belonging to another. So it's everyone working for the benefit of everyone else, as the great deacon before me just was trying to point out. So bacteria in different types of bacteria, multi-species, different colors, different types of bacteria come together to form this community. And just like human villages too, they have zoning laws that determine where each one lives, where they'll function the best. It won't be based on selfishness. It's going to be based on what is needed for survival. And apart from it being a walled city, there's another thing that is unique to not so unique, but that is important in biofilms. Sometimes you have some microorganisms that are resistant to antibiotics. Remember, there is a protective covering that makes it almost impossible for your antibiotics to get to them, and the immune system to reach them, or disinfectants and so on to get to them. But again, sometimes some of them may have antibiotic resistance genes helping them to resist antibiotics. And they regularly shed this into the environment, and other microbes that do not have that kind of resistance can pick them up. In other words, they also share ability to resist or to protect one another from danger with one another. They share that. You think about that as sharing knowledge that can help to protect them from danger. So they're able to do that. And of course, think about the video we saw a couple of days ago where was talking about human beings walking in a personal cloud of microbes. All right, so the same way microbes shed those genes and others can pick them up, we also shed microorganisms in a cloud. As I'm waving my hand, there's a cloud. You can't see them, but clouds of microbes are flying off, propounding bacterium, and others are flying off my hands in the cloud. As I'm talking to you, there is a cloud of microbes just all over me. As I sit down, scratch your hair a little bit, and it keeps flying around. And science has not yet found, if that's beneficial or not. But learning from microbes, one thing is very clear. If you're around people who people who don't keep the laws of Yahweh, where the microbes are going to be shedding are not going to be beneficial at all. So then, it makes sense then to think what fellowship has light got to do with darkness? Because, praise Yahweh. So definitely it's going to be beneficial because they're actually studying this to see how diseases are passed on from person to person in buildings. Think about hotels, think about public spaces, and so on. So the same way, so microbes do this in a beneficial way because they're all working together. You won't have one sneaking off to eat pork and then gathering the wrong kind of microbes and then sharing it with everybody else in the community. So we give off millions of these bacteria all around us all the time. And the bacteria we give off, they're part of our own, what you call microbiome, the human microbiome. And the human microbiome, that's the collection of all the microbes that you find within a particular human being. Okay, that's the human microbiome. So that's what you share as you move about, as you talk and do everything. And they're there for a benefit, like they help us to make vitamins that we cannot make, we don't have the genes to make. They help us to break down certain types of food. As adults, we can't digest milk on its own without the help of microbes to help us to do that. And of course, they help us to protect us from diseases too, because they teach our immune system how to recognize danger, how to recognize foreign microorganisms that could do us harm. So they teach our immune system how to do this. Continuing on biofilms here. So other advantages of living together in a community as in a biofilm, like I spoke about in times of adversity, it makes a lot of sense to be a part of a community that will be supportive and will help you to grow and to protect you as well. And I've also spoken about let's look at it this way, to make more sense this way. I'm about 50 to 100 trillion microorganisms speaking to you right now. Now, add to that my personal microbiome, which is for every cell that I have in my body, there's about 10 of those. So we're talking about 500 trillion to 1,000 trillion microbes. Eukaryotic cells, the cells of my tissues, as well as the microbes are there too. That's what's talking to you right now. So if we are in unity with one another, generally you're saying that you're in unity with the 500 trillion to 1,000 trillion microorganisms. That's, if we're in agreement with one another and looking out for the interests of one another, as we've seen these microbes do in their community, the way Yahweh designed it. If we keep that up, before you know it, we're going to have trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of microorganisms in unity with us. Before you know it, maybe they'll trust us enough, for us to be able to receive the authority to be able to control those microbes. So basically speaking, we're microbes, everything is microbes, and there's a lot of lessons we can learn from microbes in seeing how they work together as part of a community, in seeing how they build their cities, not as a selfish individual, but as a community for the benefit of everyone else, not individuals looking out only for their interests, but looking out for the interests of everyone else in that community, as we have seen. And before I go, if we look at Ephesians 4, I'm going to read verse 3 to 6 in Ephesians 4. That's on page 918. Endeavoring with utmost diligence and zeal to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called in one hope of your calling. One Father, one faith, one baptism. Yahweh is one and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. And for microorganisms in biofilms, it's a matter of survival. It's a matter of existence. For us, as humans, it's a little bit more than that. It's a matter of being trusted enough with authority. It's a matter of being a part of Yahweh's eternal kingdom of priests. So we need to remember that there's a lot we can do together, success that is possible if we work together. And in closing, if we'll turn to Philippians 2, and I'm going to read verse 2 here. Complete my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being united in one accord, of one mind, as we've seen with these microbes, and as is expected of every one of us. And with that, if you'll all please stand, I'll turn it over to the great Kahan, Eliyahu Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. You may all be seated. Of course, yesterday in the news, a lot taking place in our world, the environment that we all live in. The much-awaited bombshell of Mahmoud Abbas's speeches at the UN, Russia declaring its part as a power in the Middle East, going ahead, making a pact with the Syrian President Assad, who is now bombing Russia, carrying out bombing strikes, of course, in Syria. But we want to look first some things that was said by Mahmoud Abbas as he was building a foundation yesterday in his speech at the UN, This is directly from his speech as he was talking to everyone. He said, recently on May 17, 2015, 2 nuns were canonized as saints by His Holiness Pope Francis at the Vatican in the presence of tens of thousands of faithful from all around the world. The flag of Palestine was raised at the Vatican, which recognized the state of Palestine. Notice, in his mind, the state is recognized because the Vatican has recognized it, as documented in the agreement signed between the Holy See and the state of Palestine. Mahmoud Abbas went on to say, we aspire to see the independent state of Palestine taking its rightful place among the community of nations, and we are confident that it will actively contribute to the achievement of economical, cultural, and humanitarian progress of civilization with positive effects on our people, the region, and the world. And he also said that it is from Palestine and with Palestine that peace will be achieved. Now, he's showing his loyalty to the church. That's what he's doing. He's recognizing the authority of the Pope, even to the point to where if the Pope says it, we're a state, and we should be recognized as a state. And they did raise the flag at the UN yesterday, along with the many other countries, recognizing Palestine as being part of that. Now, also, the quartet met yesterday afternoon after the speeches were done at the UN, and this right here is the press statement released by the Secretary General at the UN. And it said, representatives of the quartet, which are the United Nations, Secretary Ben Ki-moon, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, the United States Secretary of State John Kerry, and the European High Representative for Common Foreign and Security Policy, Federica Mogherini, met in New York on September 30th. Now, the quartet agreed to consult with the Egyptian Foreign Minister, the Jordanian Foreign Minister, the Saudi Arabian Foreign Minister, and the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, also known commonly as the Arab League. Now, and that man is an Egyptian himself. As part of its regular and direct outreach to key Arab partners, the quartet also agreed to hear from other stakeholders from the international community. The quartet emphasized the importance of constructive international contributions by advancing a comprehensive and peace-affirmed that it will continue into its outreach efforts. The quartet reaffirmed its steadfast commitment to achieving a two-state, notice a two-state outcome. We're back with the Oslo Accords. We haven't changed here. We're still going that same direction, that meet Israeli security needs and Palestinian aspirations for statehood and sovereignty. The quartet expressed its serious concerns that the current trends on the ground, including continued acts of violence against Palestinians and Israelis, ongoing settlement activities, and the high rate of demolition of the Palestinian structures. The quartet condemned in the strongest possible terms the violence against Israelis and Palestinian civilians and reiterated the unilateral action by either party cannot prejudge the outcome of a negotiated solution, telling them no matter what you think you're doing, you do not know better than we do. You need to do what we're doing. Do what we tell you to do. And that's exactly what the quartet is telling them. You will not have a better outcome than following our instructions. Now, the quartet envoy will engage directly with the parties in order to explore concrete action both sides can take to demonstrate their genuine commitment. In other words, we're going to give you some instructions and you're going to show us that you're going to listen in pursuing a two-state solution, including encouraging efforts to agree on significant steps consistent with prior agreements that benefit Israeli and Palestinians, but most of all, to benefit what the quartet's agenda is. That's the final goal, to honor who Mahmoud Abbas is showing very clearly that he regards the Pope as someone with authority. Now, continuing on in the news, keep that in your minds because there's going to be a lot more come forth from what we see the quartet doing and also the Arab League. Now, when we begin the news, we're going to start off with, this is a clip from 2002. Most of you that were here yesterday, all of you that were here yesterday, should have heard Pastor speaking about the holidays. And, you know, and it sounds goofy to those who understand. It sounds like everybody would understand about Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and so forth. Now, he's been saying these things for years. Many, many years, practically his whole life. For the last 40 years, he's been teaching these things. Drew Carey in 2002, while speaking at the White House, well, listen to what he has to say, and there's no doubt where he would have got this from. The scary part is how he speaks it, and everybody laughs, and they go out and they do the same thing. But watch Watch what he's saying, and you'll know where he got it from. There's only one place that stupidity is exposed to its utmost. And then we're going to look, of course, at a young man named Martin Schreckel, who he actually is the CEO of a new pharmaceutical company. He bought a drug. Now, this drug is called Daraprim, and it's a drug that fights parasitic infections, and it's used by HIV patients and also cancer patients. Well, he came out after purchasing the rights to this drug that was $13.50 a pill. He immediately raised it to $700 a pill. Now, there was a huge outcry because he's raising this price, but he is not doing, when you take a look at it, he's not doing anything that the big pharmacies aren't doing, the pharmaceutical companies. He just kind of beat them to the punch on this one, and they don't like it. Now, of course, he's going to be a great businessman. He's going to cut his prices in half, and it'll be $350. So he cares. That is something to remember. Remember, the false hope is putting these drugs anyway. Get all of your money before you die. It has nothing to do with healing someone. And then we're going to take a look at what's taking place with Russia in their bombing of Syria. How Russia, they sent an ambassador in Iraq. They sent a Russian three-star general to the Embassy of America in Iraq, warning them an hour before the bombings took place and telling them you need to get out. And they have told the United States, get your jets out, get your people out, get out. And the United States, of course, is not taking this very well at all. But watch closely, because you have a lot of pushing and shoving here, fighting, they're vying for position. And remember what Malachi Martin said about how Russia would be pulled into this war. Everyone's vying for position right now. Then we're also going to take a look at Yemen, the continual bombing taking place in Yemen. And it's very important to look at one of the Houthis there. He's telling everyone the Houthis they're poor people. They don't have a military, but yet they're saying the Houthis are dropping bombs in Yemen. And he explains it very well that we don't have jets. We don't have the planes to do this. We are not doing it. Well, of course, Saudi Arabia is doing it. They're the ones dropping the bombs. Well, where does Saudi Arabia get their bombs from? Well, of course, they come from the United States. And keep this in mind, because we're going to, later on in this feast, we're going to take a look at the petrodollar and to see how Saudi Arabia has accumulated all of this military while the United States has accumulated all of this wealth and all of this oil. And then last but not least, we're going to take a look in Oklahoma, where they're saying that the monument of the Ten Commandments needs to be removed from the courthouse, because there's 10 commandments. They're saying you cannot mix church and state. Even though you can go into any school, you can go into any courthouse, see Christmas trees, Easter bunnies, religious decorations. You can do anything you want to as long as it's God worship, but don't you dare put those laws outside of our courthouse, which are supposed to represent those laws. So look at these things and take these things and remember what pastor's been bringing us. They reject the very basis of what Yahweh has brought us to live by in peace. If we could go ahead and play the news.
Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrayl Hawkins. Well, Jeff, we have war, more war, and continual war in the news for today's broadcast. But to start us off, comedian and actor Drew Carey is one of few who realizes the origin of holidays that most of the world celebrates today. At a White House Correspondents' Dinner in May of 2002, he jokingly spoke about how many of the holidays practiced today are not of biblical origin.
At that dinner, Carey spoke about 3 holidays that have nothing to do with the Bible: Christmas, Easter, and Halloween. He mentioned how there's nothing in the scriptures that tells readers to give gifts or celebrate the birth of the Savior. Neither is there any mention of Santa Claus. Now, concerning Easter, Carey spoke about the promotion of the Easter Bunny and asked, why is the Christian religion the only religion that needs a mascot to sell their stuff?
Great question. And lastly, Halloween, he said, we're always being told Satan is evil and we need to avoid the devil. And once a year, everyone says, let's party with this guy. He said, it's ridiculous.
Well, the CEO of the newly acquired drug company is being criticized from raising the price of a drug used by AIDS and cancer patients from, get this, Catan, $13.50 a pill to $750 per pill, and many, as you can imagine, are outraged. Now, Martin Shkreli was even called a disgusting specimen of humanity after he announced a 5,000 increase in the price of Darafrin. The 32-year-old has a bachelor's in business administration from Baruch College, and he learned the ins and outs of healthcare as a hedge fund manager who often clashed with drug companies.
Well, coming from a world of hedge funds into pharmaceuticals, one would wonder if he didn't do it to make lots of money. Well, Shkreli said, I think it'll be a win-win for everyone. Our company is going to profit, and we'll develop new drugs for diseases that no one's touched.
The board of directors from Retrofin, the first drug company he founded in 2002, kicked him out of the company and filed suit against him for $65 million, saying he used his control over Retrofin to enrich himself and to pay back investors in a hedge fund who lost millions in a bad investment. Now, another lawsuit brought by a former employee of Retrofin accused Shkreli of harassing the employee's family.
A court document provided states in the letter to Pierretti, who was the victim, his last name, his wife, I hope to see you and your children homeless and will do whatever I can to assure this, as well as a Facebook post to that same man's son, which said, I want you to know about your dad. He betrayed me. He stole $3 million from me. And, of course, that lawsuit with that former employee and him was settled out of court.
Well, the $65 million lawsuit states that he spent more time moving large sums of money between the company and his former investors than he did in actually developing effective medications.
Well, Russian lawmakers have given the go-ahead for the Russian military to carry out airstrikes in Syria. President Putin said in an address, the only way to combat terrorists in Syria and in neighboring countries is to act preventatively, to destroy the terrorists in the territories that they already have captured.
He continued, Russia has always supported and still supports the fight against terrorism, but we are sure that this fight should be conducted according to international law. From the U.S., the Pentagon has confirmed that the Russian military has notified the U.S. that it was starting its air operation.
The Russians wasted no time beginning their airstrikes against ISIL, targeting a communications center, oil and arms depots. This comes as a request from Damascus that has been engaged in this fighting for almost 5 years against those militants in ISIL. And the Russian Defense Ministry has stated that there will be no ground troops involved in this operation, and it is limited merely to airstrikes.
Sergei Ivanov said the use of the Russian military on the ground is out of the question, according to the president.
Well, as we continue our ongoing coverage in Syria and Russia's involvement in that, Larry has our latest update on how big this campaign is. Larry, just how expansive is the bombing campaign with Russia airstrikes in the area of Syria?
At this point, Russia's Ministry of Defense has publicly confirmed that they, in conjunction with the Syrian army, have carried out several strikes against ISIS insurgents spanning 3 provinces, including Homs, Hama, and Latakia. The strikes are reported to have been aimed at military equipment, communication facilities, and weapon storages. Though Russian involvement has provoked controversy in some circles, President al-Assad has welcomed Moscow's aid, and it was in fact Damascus which requested Russian assistance. Analysts are now labeling the sedition in Syria the worst war in the world, as fear continues to mount due to American and Russian fighters both being in Syria but on opposite sides of the conflict. The uproar in Syria started 4 years ago when insurgents instigated a coup to overthrow Syria's democratically elected president Bashar al-Assad. 250,000 people have since died and 12 million have fled the ancient nation, creating a refugee crisis in Europe Europe and parts of the territories being held by ISIS. Russian efforts have reportedly been focused on groups other than ISIS that have been striving to overthrow the Syrian government. This is being seen as an attempt to strengthen the position of al-Assad, a move which Secretary of Defense Carter said is tantamount to throwing gas on the fire. The U.S. is also said to be offended by the way the Russian military chose to make it aware of its intentions to strike. An hour before its strike, it walked into the U.S. embassy in Baghdad, announced that Russian aircraft were about to begin flying over Syria, and that American airplanes should stay away. This, the Secretary of Defense said, was unprofessional. The two nations have now reportedly scheduled a video conference, however, to try and establish procedures which will work to ensure that their planes don't run into each other, particularly if Russian aircraft were to strike groups supported by the U.S. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Katan, it sure seems that Russia is not holding back when it comes to these airstrikes. Well, the Pentagon's position on the Russian airstrikes against ISIL is that they are not hitting their intended targets. Now, Moscow denies these allegations. And as a rebuttal to U.S. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter's remarks, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stressed the great length that their Air Force was taking when he said, "Our American partners have concerns for the fact that our airstrikes may hit the wrong targets. We are very closely watching our strikes, that they are carefully conducted. Our targets are solely the position of objects and equipment belonging to the armed terrorist group ISIL."
Mr. Lavrov also said Moscow has no knowledge of any civilian casualties, and Russian military advisors could back that up to anyone who wanted proof. Due to the fact that the U.S.-led coalition and Russia are now both taking military action in Syria, the Russian foreign minister and his United States counterpart, Secretary of State John Kerry, have agreed to hold negotiations and consultations to de-escalate conflicts between the two nations and help prevent possible misunderstandings from taking place in the region.
While America did seem to be launching accusations at Russia for the new turn of events, the Russian diplomat is not alluding to an uncooperative situation. Instead, Mr. Lavrov and Mr. Kerry have both said they agreed on certain steps to provide and create conditions for further political change in Syria. While no details were shared as of yet, Mr. Kerry was, however, taking proposals back to Washington for further discussion.
Now, to further aid in the strained relations between the two countries, both officials, Lavrov and Kerry, have vowed to be in constant contact on this matter and to monitor the situation to prevent any possible misunderstandings from taking place. And as you can imagine, Jeff, this is especially important when militaries of both countries are now involved and present there in Syria. You want to be very careful that no one's toes get stepped on in this turn of events.
Well, turning our attention now to the southern end of the Middle East, we find another airstrike on the country of Yemen has targeted this time a wedding celebration. The death toll in this incident, according to UN figures, is up to 131 people. It's the deadliest single Air Force attack in the country since the war broke out. Now, reports suggest that a man with connections to the Houthi rebel movement was celebrating his wedding when the bombing happened.
However, the Saudi-led coalition is denying any involvement with this assault, blaming local militia for the devastation. Saudi-led airstrikes have been common for months now. In an interview with RT, Yemen political analyst Hasham Al-Maisi had much to say to refute the Saudi claims that this was the work of local rebels.
He said multiple times they've hit residential areas. They hit homes, they hit weddings, speaking, of course, of the Saudi-led forces. He continued, unfortunately, because there is no outcry, they're not going to stop doing that. Houthis don't have fighter jets. Islamic forces don't have fighter jets. When they keep saying that it's somebody else, when the Saudis yesterday, for example, denied it was them, that it must have been that of the Houthis. For God's sake, he said, the Houthis do not have fighter jets. Nobody's conducting airstrikes but the Saudis, so it must have been them.
Interesting. Well, Mr. Alamasi called on the UN and the international community to directly condemn the Saudis for these attacks. He explained how he didn't think that they would, however, because they have a lot of business to do with Saudi Arabia and a lot to gain, including weapons contracts and other military contracts. So their interests are a little bit divided between the two.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, he also went on to further explain the Saudis control a lot of the media globally. Unfortunately, Yemen doesn't have a lot of friends abroad. They don't have a lot of friends with the international community. So while the Saudis continue to pound us, a lot of people are making a lot of money, a lot of business with the Saudis. So it's not exactly to the best of their interest to condemn the Saudis. They do not want to antagonize the Saudis. So as you mentioned, Katan, it's more about doing business than about doing what's right.
That goes back to that love of money. While human rights watchdogs have been long sounding the alarm over a humanitarian catastrophe taking place in Yemen, recently revealed figures show it is civilians who are bearing the brunt of the war. Since the war started in March 2015, more than 2,200 have been killed and over 4,700 people injured.
Well, lastly in the news today, a monument of the Ten Commandments that supporters said reflects the history of law now violates the Oklahoma State Constitution, according to the state Supreme Court. In a recent ruling, the Oklahoma Supreme Court said public property shall not be used to support any religion, and they ordered the monument to be removed from in front of the Oklahoma City Capitol building.
However, as you might imagine, some are upset with this ruling, and there are already plans to fight the High Court's decision. Some lawmakers, in fact, are calling for the impeachment of the Supreme Court justices who made the ruling. Now, while the Attorney General's office wants a rehearing of the case, they believe the monument should stay as a historical one, not a religious one.
Former state representative of District 91, Mike Reynolds, says the problem is the court today has ruled, and they said, oh, well, it doesn't comply with the Oklahoma Constitution because it's a religious monument. No one's ever said it's a religious monument. Well, some people may have, but not the people that passed that bill.
Mr. Reynolds helped spearhead placement of the monument and says they will fight the decision. Mr. Reynolds continued to emphasize the roots of where our country came from, our state was founded on, and the things of that nature. We know the Ten Commandments represent the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, the Oklahoma Supreme Court may have spoken, but for now it's doubtful the monument will be moved anytime soon.
Now, another representative called the ruling judicial bullying and says lawmakers could decide to change the state constitution to keep the monument in place. Now, Katan, just as a little bit of history, this isn't the first time that there's been problems with this monument. In October of 2014, a man crashed into it with his car, broke it into several pieces, claiming that Satan told him to do it.
Wow.
Well, want to know the cause of all the sickness, disease, famines, wars, Syrian crisis, bombings of weddings, and the list goes on and on? Well, the Oklahoma Supreme Court just showed you. Remove the Ten Commandments and remove the only light of righteousness, the guidelines given to mankind on how to avoid all of these curses. Yisrayl Hawkins says, if you remove the laws of Yahweh, you will bring disunity and the curse of death. Well, don't let another day go by without contacting the House of Yahweh and requesting your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. And don't forget to check out the Yisrayl Hawkins Says program by going to www.yisraelsays.com. The most informative Bible search software on the market today is now available absolutely free. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494 or visit them on any of their websites at www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, or www.yahwehsbranch.com. You can also check out our new website at www.ypnnews.com. And to email the House of Yahweh, send your emails to info@yahweh.com. And for any calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another exciting and informative message from Yisrayl Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.
At this time, if everybody would please stand, I'd like to introduce the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kahan Yisrayl Abel Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone! Shalom, everyone! The third day and you're still rejoicing. Praise Yahweh. You may be seated. I hope you remain that strong throughout this feast. What a wonderful blessing. The news is a wonderful blessing too. Stacked up here on news, I want to use during this sermon, may the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. I hope you remember, but I know you don't, where we left off yesterday. We'll quickly rehearse this. If you'll go over to, no, I don't want to start there. I want to start with the day before, actually. The day before yesterday, the microorganisms that the great Kohan from over near the great river Euphrates, that part of the country is getting very scary. We have someone here from Ukraine at this time. Praise Yahweh. Yahweh is calling, and some of them are answering quicker than I thought they would. But yesterday now we were talking about what Kepha had written in the concerning this collaboration of sin that our forefathers turned to, and I was reading in 2nd Kepha day before yesterday. It's such if you think about it now, Satan was with Yahweh when he created mankind. Satan had the power or authority to actually create and maintain flesh, meaning she had the authority and was trusted by the microorganisms, as he brought out so clearly here this morning. The microorganisms will work with you if they trust you completely. And it's almost like Yahweh has got to say to them, he's proving to earth when he says heaven and earth, in like in Deuteronomy, the 30th chapter, when he says, he's proven to heaven and earth, what we're going to do, the ones he chooses, what we will actually do when he gives us this authority. So the microorganisms that make up the earth, Yahweh is proving to them that he will not allow this sin that is causing all the destruction right now on earth, to the earth, to people on the earth. He will not allow it it's a hard subject. The microorganisms, as Satan saw Yahweh put together in creating the earth and the planets, that the heavens that actually govern the earth, including your sun and your moon and so forth. Now, they were put together to work as a clock. Well, of course, when Satan turned against mankind because of jealousy for what Yahweh had planned for you to do, to give you, she started working on these microorganisms to bring a troublous system to this body of perfect, unified organisms that make up the air you breathe, the water you drink, the vegetables the nourishment you take into your body. She, if you just think of the wisdom this woman has, and how she was able to create by getting mankind to do what she asked him to do, in starting the act of fornication or adultery, and of course to bring these diseases, these other microorganisms, as killers. They're murderers. They're like the people who produce them, like Cain. They're full of hatred. Now there has to be a hatred there created in these microorganisms to cause them, which we call sickness and disease, that make up sickness and disease. There's a hatred in these that causes them to go after the microorganisms like an army, to kill them, to bring cancer to the person's body. And then here we have in 2008, this generation, Yahshua said, would be the worst. In 2008, we have an estimated number of new cancer cases in 2008 of 12,667,500. That's 2008. In 2000 and let me see if I can find that. 2014 was what I wanted to show you. 2012, it rose from 2008, 12 million to 14 million. It rose by 2 million cases a year now here in the United States. So, and Yahshua said that in chapter 24 of Matthew, he said, you're going to see the worst of this sickness and disease. So we're seeing this rising. I have one for 2015, I do believe. Here it is. Just in the United States. No, this is in children. I'll get these organized for the next time I speak. Here's 2014. We have 1 billion, 39 million. Now this has come from 2012 to 2014. And it's jumped from the millions now to 1,039,629,073 cases in 2 years. The children that are being born with brain tumors and nervous system cancers now are extreme. Some of them are readily recognized when they're born, which means they were producing this cancer in the mother's womb even. And of course, they recognize it, but then some of them are so small, the microorganisms, the killers of what Yahweh created, has been placed in the woman's body by sin. And this sin comes from, of course, a combination of eating unclean animals. And if you ate them any time in your life, you could add fornication to it later. And here comes the sin against your own body that's bringing this forth then, or helping to bring it forth. It's like the man who visited his father's bed, and we see the results of that, thousands of years later, even down to today, we see it. And then Yahweh says to us, you're going to come to this point since you've refused my laws, you're going to come to this point right here to where it will be the worst ever. You will choose a mate, but that mate will be unfaithful to you. And of course, he shows this to show the reason to heaven and earth, to prove to them who he's not going to take. He shows them they're not going to get into the new earth to destroy you. They wouldn't work with you. These microorganisms will never work with you unless you win their trust. And of course, Yahweh's proven this to them, that the ones he chooses for his kingdom will actually be faithful to him and the microorganisms that we will be working with throughout all eternity. To create a disease today, which is being done by the Vatican, they create it through, of course, this is the agency, the same agency that was used, that they called Cain in the 4th book of Genesis. That agency has never stopped. Satan created that agency to make war against and to grow and actually hoping it will eventually destroy mankind and the heavens. And Yeshua said this plainly. He said, if she can do that, if she can destroy the heavens and the earth, then Yahweh's laws will perish from the universe. But if she can't, and they will go on killing and killing until they finally all destroy themselves, along with the planets that Yahweh has created in the heavens. Yes, Yahweh created these planets. The scripture shows that he did. I'm going to put my trust in that. But when she went to work on these microorganisms, she used the agency that yielded to her, that Yahweh had said, don't partake of this tree now. That religion, this agency is bringing forth this religion. And the agency, that's bringing forth this tree, Yahweh says, or Yeshua said, it cannot bring forth an acceptable fruit. A fruit that will be acceptable by Yahweh, acceptable to the earth, meaning the microorganisms there and in heaven too, plus the other larger beings that Yahweh has made to enjoy life to almost like human beings. They're not quite that sufficient to where the human beings are going to be given this body in full. We enjoy it now just eating a meal. When we get our subconscious minds and receive the bodies without blood, that you don't have to depend on blood and getting it defilement in it from somebody breathing on you, or the dust coming from another planet or whatever, then the microorganisms will be working with us, and we'll have a clean atmosphere to work in. But our bodies will be so sensitive at that time that it will be like daylight to dark. The joy that the joy of eating a sub sandwich at the cafeteria. they're so delicious this year. I don't know if my taste buds are increasing, but I looked out the window this morning, and I seeing the people rejoice. One of them was singing to me, which, I encourage him to do that every morning. I missed him yesterday morning, and he said, well, it wasn't the Sabbath, That makes no difference as long as I'm here singing. But it's kind of it was kind of humorous when I looked out, and here's a man with a gold suit, and he's licking his fingers, Oh, that was beautiful. He was really enjoying that, standing out in the parking lot here. He was working, but he's enjoying it. He'd been over to the cafeteria and got that, and he was enjoying it. But I thought then, that when we get our new bodies, that won't be a that won't be a drop in the bucket to the joy we're going to share over food alone. And that's one of the first things that Yahshua is going to share with us is a meal. But then back to these microorganisms that Satan got started. Now she was with Yahweh, as I said, and walked up and down in the coals of fire, getting this thing to going, as Yahweh shows in the Holy Scriptures, which means she helped in overcoming all the obstacles to create this human body to perfection. Same thing that we're doing now, the priest and priestess and deacons and everyone that is working together here, we ourselves are walking up and down in the coals of fire. That's what that means. And in overcoming the obstacles that Satan is putting in front of us and has put in front of us with these killer diseases that she has going here that are increasing. It's plain to see they're increasing. Along with the hatred. You remember Yeshua's words, because iniquity abounds, so does the hatred. And it's going to be the worst ever. Well, we can see it is from the news that we have today. You're seeing thousands fall at your right hand and by your side and so forth. And it's going to get closer. You're going to, if you don't recognize it yet, you should be recognizing it now and turning from all sin. Keep your vows. Keep your vows to Yahweh. Don't let your yes be yes and your no be no, and don't do anything more than that, or less than that. Be like Yahshua. Be like Yahweh. Dependable. Dependable on what you say, so the microorganisms will know that they can depend on what you say. That's what you mean. What comes out of your mouth. Got that? Okay. Praise Yahweh. Now, Satan, in using this agency, which was Cain, was the man. He was the man that she used to start it. And of course, Yahweh shows that. No, he wasn't a 2 or 3 year old man or a 6-year-old boy or whatever when he killed Abel. Probably, I'd say 500 or more years old. I can prove that with their own figures. That he and Abel were about that age. Well, Abel had worked for that long building the house of Yahweh and had a great work going. And of course, another one took his place after that. That was a prophecy, prophesied to do. And of course, that Abel, the work that Abel started, came on down then. Yahweh brought it on down to us. But Satan used Cain to start a sinful situation that in Cain's character, you can see it. He told you in chapter 4 of Genesis, he says to Cain, "Why are you so angry?" Well, there's got to be a reason for this. And when he said that, he's trying to get it through your head. There's something still in your body here that is making you this way, making you angry. Otherwise, you would be in a pleasant atmosphere of yourself inside your own body and mind. So he's saying why, and he's trying to get Cain to wake up and understand what he's doing wrong here, to cause this hatred in his own mind. Well, he doesn't show us exactly, except don't eat of this tree, any portion of it, any portion. That tree, of course, is Yahweh's 613 laws that his house, who was Abel, brought forth by Abel at that time. Still coming forth from Abel, that original work, still coming down to us, and we're still reading it and benefiting from it. And we will throughout all eternity. That his work is something that lasts forever. It will never cease. But Satan, in causing Cain to sin, she started, as the apostle said, you're sinning against your own body. This is something that is going to cause you trouble. Now, at this same time, the man that wrote about this, who was the apostle Shaul, wrote about this in book 2. He had a hatred, and it was a built-in hatred for the name Yahweh and Yahweh's laws. Christianity teaches that the so-called Jews, as they call them, was keeping Yahweh's laws. They were not keeping Yahweh's laws. Yeshua said it over and over, and none of you are keeping Yahweh's laws, and that's your biggest trouble. And you're seeking to kill me because you're doing the will of the one back in Genesis, the serpent back in Genesis, that planted this seed, and you're nourishing these seeds from one generation to another. And then that's also told to you in Genesis 49. I'm not going to go back and bring that sermon again, but you need to get it if you haven't heard it. You need to get it and rehearse it, because in Genesis 49, first verse shows you what's going to take place in the last days, and shows you all the evil, including fornication, adultery, and coming down through the 12 tribes to this generation, you and I. And he, as he said to Cain, you must overcome this if you want part in my kingdom. If you want part in my kingdom, you must overcome it. If you want to be acceptable for life, for receiving life. Now, I'd already told them, don't eat of this way, or dying, you will die. I've explained that in detail. Dying, you will die from the first sin. You don't get away with sin. It causes a microorganism to start in your body that is deadly to the microorganisms that you need for your body. And these microorganisms, the more you nourish them, they're like chickens. If you've ever run a hatchery, you've got to nourish these eggs for them to grow. They've got to have everything they need. Put a germ in there, a deadly germ in the hatchery. Don't keep it clean, Let deadly germs enter in to those eggs, and you'll have a bunch of dead chickens or crippled chickens from the eggs in the hatchery that you're trying to get to raise up into hens that'll lay your eggs and furnish your meat. Well, today's world now, and today's news, we see sin, the sins. Now, the reason the Vatican, the divining serpent, is bringing forth sin is to produce, there's benefits in it, and you could see from the news this morning, they're in it for the money. Well, everybody knows that. The senators, one senator publicly said to them, for 50 years you have done nothing but cut poison, and burn. And he said, you haven't benefited the people, you haven't stopped cancer, you haven't found a cure for cancer, you just cut, poison, and burn for 50 years, and we've been furnishing you huge amounts of money for research, and you've done nothing with it but produce more cancers. Cancers keep multiplying, along with every other disease that Satan started with Cain. The benefits in this, when I read to you yesterday in Kefa and also in Romans, how they're lust. The lust. You got to remember these things now to tie them together. But through the lust for money, that's one of the things. Lust for money is a root of all evil. But the lust for fulfillment of what they think is the desirable way, it's really not the desirable way if you use your head to do a little bit of thinking with. You can cut yourself off from Yahweh totally and eternal life by going after this desirable way for a few minutes. We see men that Yahweh gave us to set us the perfect example, and showing how Yosef resisted it, so we know they can resist. Other people like Daniel, even when he was taken captive, he was in captivity when Yahweh was working with him. But he turned to Yahweh, seeking Yahweh in captivity, knowing full well now that that his people had not followed Yahweh's way, which means he knew the prophet's writings. He said he knew the prophet's writings. He said, I figured out from prophecy. That's what he tells us. It tells us in his own book. I figured out from prophecy when Yahweh was going to do a certain thing. But he knew that they weren't keeping Yahweh's laws at that time. He knew that they were creating this deadly tree that Yahweh says, don't partake of it or you will die. Well, today now, we have in Revelations 18, we have a city that sits on 7 hills, that is leader of the kings of the earth. In chapter 9 of Revelations, I know you know all of this, but chapter 9 of Revelations, the last few verses said they still won't repent after a third part of the mankind is dead over a fourth part of the earth in and around the great river Euphrates, with nuclear war, famine, and disease. So nuclear war could only be brought if the mind is so diseased and it has this hatred in it that we saw in Cain, that sin also created there, with these microorganisms that go into your body, that you allow into your body or create into your body, as Cain did with his sins. So today now, in Revelations 18, Yahweh shows that Rome is going to be burned with nuclear burning. And what do you see next there? He says, and all these traders are going to look and say, who is going to buy our goodies now? That's the next thing you see. So what is taking place with this divining serpent right here on the 7 hills of Rome? It's leading all the kings of the earth. They, in Isaiah 65, shows they eat pork. That is, they teach. Now, you got to put together what I brought you yesterday. I can't bring all this in look at the scriptures, but I'll rehearse it with you if you'll just pay attention, maybe write it down. But I read yesterday that in the last days scoffers will come. That word scoffers, it's not like some child pulling pranks. This means teachers. This means teachers that will ridicule Yahweh's laws. The Pope stands up and says, do you want salvation given to you or you want to earn it? He's speaking of what I brought out. I knew he was speaking against what I had already brought, and you could tell that he was referring to the house of Yahweh right here. We're the only house of Yahweh on earth. We're the only ones that's bringing forth the laws of Yahweh. We're the only ones that know how the earth was created. He doesn't even believe the earth was created. He thinks it just happened. It's always been here. No, there wasn't a creator that created it. It's always been here. It's just something that happened, you know. Some gas blew up. Well, why did the gas blew up, and where did the gas come from? Oh, gassy God. You know, well, where did the God come from then? Well, so they want you to start doubting the Scriptures so they can coax you into a sin. Well, why do they want to coax you into sin? Now get this, why do they want to push sin? Sin is what he's pushing. You need to let your girls go out and commit fornication with the boys. This is a teaching that comes forth from the serpent, the divining serpent, the leader of the kings of the earth. And they're openly talking about this, openly teaching it. From folly wood that enters every home. I tell the parents, you know, we can teach your children, but if you take them home and put them in front of a television set, you'll ruin everything we taught for 8 hours in the school. You'll do it. You know, it's like a mixture. Like the mixture. You're told, don't partake of this mixture. Genesis 3, verse 5, 1 through 5. And if you go home, or your child does, or you yourself, you're not going to have your mind on what you were taught here in the house of Yahweh. What you need to do, if you got time to sit down with the book of Yisrayl in your hand. Right. I am the one sent, and I don't teach foolishness. I don't teach unrighteousness. I teach you righteousness. And you can rehearse a verse. You read it over and over till it gets in your mind, till it becomes a part of you. And I can just refer to it and bring your memory to that, and you'll say, hey, why did I do this today? Well, you slipped up. Sure you did. Because of the microorganisms that are still working around in your body, lurking in your body. Cleansing helps some. Righteousness helps even more. Practice of righteousness, that's what we're shown in the Holy Scripture. But now the Vatican is teaching sin. So sin causes sickness. Sickness makes pills worth, what was it, $750 a pill? Was that what they said? $750 a pill? And the man justifies himself and said, well, of course, this is going to build a huge corporation, and we're going to have funds, big-time funds, to research and cure all kinds of diseases. Well, I got a surprise for him, if you just listen. Yahweh says your diseases are incurable. There's a way we're going to get rid of them, of course, and that is you're going to receive new bodies, but those diseases won't be in those new bodies, and if you partake of them after that, I'm not talking about you. If you throw this chance away right now, you won't have another one. Yahweh has brought you here and trained you, and there's not a second chance spoken of anywhere in the Holy Scriptures. You better overcome, and he gives you space, he says, to overcome. And you can do it if you set your mind to do it and put aside all these other things that's interfering with the study of Yahweh's Word. You have but a short time, and the apostles themselves said, you know, make use of that time that you have right now. If you don't, you're going to burn in hell. You'll be unacceptable as the offering that Cain offered. You won't get it from me. You'll get it from your television sets and those things that you allow to interfere. We've had people I know that we've told them, don't be going and eating in these places, but yet they go and eat. and we have other people who take food with them so they can be clean. They'll witness, this is a witness against you. Those who will go out, a couple of people, they're both dead now. I feel sorry for them, but they were seen eating kosher hot dogs and Sam's. Well, I don't know who koshered that mess at Sam's, but I can tell you Yahweh did not kosher them. And they keep it a secret. Go there and try to find where you can buy some where it says where it'll have the ingredients on it. They won't show it to you. They won't even show you the package it came in. But they took their word for it. Take the word of somebody in the world? Oh yeah, they're cleaned. Yeah, they washed that pork down this morning. They washed that cancerous cow down this morning before they mixed it in your hamburger meat. Now the news is, I don't have to tell you this, the news is telling you this. Create sickness and disease. Now, you're not following me if you create sickness and disease. You're following the ways of the world. The Catholic Church is creating diseases by teaching the laws of Yahweh are done away with. And Isaiah said to them in Isaiah 65, this broth of these abominations is floating around in your blood vessels right now. And here you are worshiping the dead, casting Yahweh aside, keeping memorials to the dead. They now call it Halloween, and the Pope says, we need to call this Holyween. That's like calling a pork wiener a holy wiener. It's senseless. It's like the comedian. Do you hear the comedian making fun of these religions? He could see the idiocy in this. Okay, so we have this big conglomeration covering the earth now. The Satan, or the divining serpent, is bringing this forth. This is the agent that Satan is bringing forth. In fact, chapter 12 says that she gave him his seat and great authority, this city, this great city that sits on 7 hills. So they gave him this authority to bring forth this teaching for you to eat unclean foods. And then you go out into the stores and you think, well, I'm getting clean food. That's what we used to think. Well, here it is now. Here is pork stacked right next to your beef. Here is clean fish with shells on it. And it's all unclean. Everything in that cabinet, if you'll read your scriptures, becomes unclean. No, you cannot buy fresh meat that I know of anywhere in the world, except the House of Yahweh that I know of, where we prepare our own with extreme guidance. And I tell the manager, who is Yada Kimball, we've got to be extreme. We've got to be over strict. We can't allow anything to infect that meat. Because if we do, we're adding to Satan's work. Well, the church, the Roman Catholic Church, is teaching eat pork. It's teaching eat hamburgers with after you see on the news, yes, it has cancer in it. Yeah, they put the cancerous cow right in the hamburger and grind it up. They don't throw it away. Same way with the chickens. They put that in there too. Well, if she can create a disease that will start clogging up your blood, remember Yahweh said it's in your bloodstream. So this will slow down your defense system, by the way. Now get this, I want you to understand this. They're selling these clickers that go in your body. When your heart gets to where it can't handle it, then you go to the doctor and he puts a booster in there that gives your heart a shock. I got shocked when I found out what it cost. My great friend told me. He said he got a bill for $113,000. $113,000. And I said, I bet you that Japan makes them things for $10 a piece. But they charged $113,000 for that thing. The government pays for a big portion of this because they're the ones that handle the insurance companies. So they pay for a big portion. Well, you know who's paying that big portion? The taxpayers. The taxpayers in the United States. The government can't pay this without your taxes. So they take your taxes and they pay this, I guess, $100,000, while the insurance company, that's the part that the citizens pay, and then on top of that, the person that got it has to pay a big bill, like $13,000 himself, or more, probably more. But this is the incentive, you see, for bringing forth this sin that corrupts the body, corrupts the mind. It brings money into their pockets. Now, in the 9th chapter of Revelations, it actually shows this, and shows they still won't repent after a third part of the people are dead over that fourth part of the earth. They still won't repent of their pharmaceuticals. If you want to turn to that quickly, Revelations 9. Revelations 9, this is shown, by the way, in Clark's commentary, I believe. I think that's where I wrote it to put a note in my scriptures. Verse 21. 9 verse 21 says, start with verse 20. And the rest of the men who were not killed by these plagues. Now this plague that it's talking about, remember where it came from. Satan. She helped create these microorganisms that are warriors against the microorganisms in your body that we're trying to get rid of with successfully practicing the laws of Yahweh, and we're doing it. We're making grounds, brethren. We're actually making grounds. People are getting healthier from it. But the rest of the men who were not killed of these plagues caused by these microorganisms called sickness and disease, AIDS, cancer, and so forth, still did not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship demons. Yes, demons, that's the ones that were cast down with Satan. That's the heavenly beings that inspire, that have an influence on people's life, on their lives. When they get up in a bad mood and hang on to it, more than likely that influence is coming from something, could be more than a microorganism. But they work with the microorganisms in your body. This is shown in the scriptures also. And God's Elohim of gold and silver and brass. It's not speaking of a totem pole or something that's made with gold, silver, and brass. It's speaking of money that brings it in. The duck that laid the golden egg, or the goose, or the golden calf. Yes, it brings in the silver and the gold and the brass and the stone, and of wood and lumber and so forth, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. Neither did they repent of their murders, that is, the abortions. I believe I have something on that if I can find it. No, that's children, 15,695 children every day born with cancer. Now, this is of the brain, I believe. Let's see, figures, cancer. Maybe I don't. Yeah, I believe I do. Here it is. Here it is. Murders of children. Murders of children every year. This is in the United States now. Remember, they don't repent of their murders? Did you see the woman telling you why? Did y'all see that? Where the woman from home planning, family planning, they're planning to sell your child body parts when they get them cut up and sell them to the doctor to use in your bodies, to feed back to you. What do they call that? Isn't there a word for that? Isn't it cannibal or what is it? I forgot, but don't you forget. That's how sick the world is. Well, you know how many murders here in the United States there is right now every year? 1,058,490. That's just in the United States now. Every year, babies being slaughtered. Neither would they repent of their murders. The murders, because there's big money in murder. It also includes war. There's big money in war. We sell them weapons. Did you see that? Saudi Arabia? Who gave them the weapons? Who sold them the weapons? Who went to see them after they were sold the weapons or before they were sold the weapons? And then who told? That was the Pope that went to see them. And who told before he went to see them what the plans were of the Vatican? One of their own writers, Malachi Martin, The Keys of This Blood. Yemen is Muslim. I think they said there was 2 Catholics down there. 2 Catholics. They didn't want them to leave either. It's Muslim. Malachi Martin said Satan is going to make war against all of those who won't worship her. Now they're trying to make out like that the Muslims are evil people, like they themselves, sodomites and rapists of children and so forth. They're putting false news out about them. I've read about the Muslims. I've visited with them. We had workers in Israel that we work with that were Muslims. They will not eat pork. They strive not to eat pork. They strive to eat kosher food. They're not getting any of it, but they don't know the difference in kosher. Right now, they're sneaking it in, like Satan is sneaking things in she don't even have to label. Did you know we have inspectors in the house that are working daily so we can make sure that we don't buy something that is unclean for you? This is this team working together in unity to keep a clean house. Well, neither did they repent of their murders, nor did they repent of their sorcery. That word sorcery, it's number 5331. It means medication, pharmacy. Medication and pharmacy. It's also referred to as witchcraft, sorcery. It also says, this is a Strong's Concordance, says it's a druggist and pharmacist. Pharmacy and pharmacist is all included in that word. Christian authorities admit that Rome is the chief seat of idolatry. This is Thayer's Greek lexicon, page 531. That's a footnote in the book of Yahweh. our footnotes in the book of Yahweh is really great. The Yisrayl says program. Yisrayl says program. You don't get interpretations in that program. You get factual scriptures that show you. Now, I don't interpret the Bible. I don't interpret the book of Yahweh. I use scripture that does the interpreting. It's without private interpretation. I believe that and I follow it. But just let me rehearse this just a little bit before we go, and keep this in mind, because this is very important that you understand this subject. The conglomeration that we have in the world today, where the Catholic, the Vatican sets as leader of the kings of the earth, that is the agent that the commentators say, it's plain to see an agent did this. But who is that agent? Who did they use? Well, of course, Yahweh shows them, but they can't understand it on their own. The only way they can understand is go to the one sent. Now, and if they'll come to the one sent, Yeshua said, come to the one sent, he says, seek the habitation of Yahweh. There you'll find the one sent. He won't be going to you, but you can come to him. And you will be taught these things. You'll be taught how to create the heavens and the earth. Yahweh will probably instruct you one day to create a planet or a group of planets, for a certain reason, but it'll be for a reason. It won't be just because of wantation, lusting after something just because you think it'd bring you pleasure at the time. That's what the world is doing now, going to and fro. They get it, they don't want it. One newsman said, there's some of these people that can advertise things and you think you got to have it. You use it one time and you see that you didn't even want it, but you can't get rid of it. Nobody wants to buy the thing from you. And he said the world is full of this psychology. Well, this is the way it is, but you take and you see how complicated this system is, where they take the drugs. They take these drugs and they send them out to all the world. Now, one man is making a killing off of just that one drug, but they have books of drugs. I used to have a book. It was about that thick that showed me a picture. This is when I was on the police department and working special service, but it had a picture of every pill, and I could look up any pill and find out what it was if I was investigating a case where illegal drugs was being used, or if drugs were stolen from a drugstore, and we had someone that had a pocket full of them. Where did you get these? You didn't buy them, not in bulk this way. You got your pockets full. Well, I could look this up, and we would ask them. I'd say, what is this? Well, I don't know. And you bought it, and you didn't know? Well, of course, we could look it up in that book, and it'd show the picture of it and everything. But it is a thick book, and thousands of these drugs, and all of them bringing gobs of money into the agent that is pushing this, getting all the world to push it. The world is sick. It's really sick right now. It can't make a sensible decision. That's what President Obama told them. He said, we're like blind men stumbling in the dark, groping in the dark for an answer. These same blind men that are searching, they think they can find it like Cain by killing his brother. And this is what they're going to right now, and you can see it building. We could have nuclear war any hour right now. It could start any hour right now. It might start before the feast is over. You may not even have to go home. May Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the service back to the next leader. I love you.
Bye.